Members, we're about to take up file item 7. File item 7, ACA 21, is passed temporarily. Members, the House is back in session. We're going to move to file item 8, SB X8. Mrs. We'll recess the regular session and convene the 8th extraordinary session. And we will file item 8, AB 8th extraordinary, file item, please. File item 8. Ms. Evans, you may open.
No, clerk.
Clerk will read. And members, these are on amendments, by the way. These are on amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 1 with amendments by Assemblymember Evans.
All right, Ms. Evans, on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I get to the amendments, members, I just want to mention that this is the first bill in a series of bills that will start to address our $20 billion deficit in the 8th special session. This first bill, the amendments will make adjustments to the 2009-2010 budget by shifting federal funds for HIV to local programs that provide prevention services, testing, and other support. And these particular funds are available because at the state level we eliminated 21 positions, and so that money would then go to local agencies to provide this HIV programs. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Okay, members will have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the normal sound of aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments are adopted. Is there any objection with taking the bill up without reference to file? All right, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 1 by the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to the support of state government, making appropriation therefore.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just summarized the bill for you when I talked about the amendments. Now this is a vote on the bill in chief, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Any question or debate on the bill? Hearing and seeing none, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Clerk, close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 3. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 9 with amendments. AB number 2. Ms. Evans on the amendment. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 2 with amendments by Assemblymember Evans.
Ms. Evans.
On the amendment.
On the amendments. That's correct.
Members, the amendments to this bill will score $2.2 billion in savings in the 2010-11 budget. It reflects reductions in a variety of programs that would occur next year. These reductions include cuts to corrections and reflect the Governor's information technology savings. They also reflect the Governor's proposal to delay a prepayment for post-employment benefits. And the bill also, the amendments would also score the savings that are associated with the Governor's executive order that reduces state salary expenditures by 5%. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Okay, we'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the normal sound of aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments are adopted. Are there any objections to taking the bill up without reference to file? Hearing none, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 2 by the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to the Budget Act of 2010.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just summarized what the bill does when I presented on the amendments. Again, this bill scores $2.2 billion in savings in the 2010-2011 budget. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. DeVore, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this measure. Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, we're about ready to take up a series of bills that the Republicans have not had a chance to look at in the State Assembly. Further, we're about ready to take up a series of bills that do not even begin to address the $9 billion shortfall that the Governor asked for the special session, asked us to come together to deal with. In fact, this bill, like many of the other bills that we're about to consider today, actually contains statements about intended reductions in the budget, about intended solutions and savings. They're not actual budget bills, and as such, they, for the most part, have no fiscal impact whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, the California ship of state is taking on water at an alarming rate, and it is going down in icy waters. This bill, like many of the bills that we are going to be addressing today, does nothing whatsoever to solve the fundamental underlying issues about our dramatic imbalance in the state of California. Passing these bills today will do virtually nothing to solve the problem. We will be, again, right back here, presumably in a ninth extraordinary session very quickly, because we are not tackling these problems. Ladies and gentlemen, not only on a process issue, but also on a substantive issue, the bills that we are addressing today are woefully inadequate to the challenges facing our state. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot support this bill. I cannot support most of the bills we're presenting today because they do not address the problem.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. You may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the first issue that was raised by the last speaker, these bills have been in print since Friday, so there's been plenty of time for reading of the language of the bills. And I also want to point out this bill, again, as I said earlier, achieves $2.2 billion savings towards our $20 billion deficit. This whole package of bills achieves over $5 billion of savings towards our $20 billion deficit. And we are doing this within the special session. The deadline is today. Members, we need to act today, and we are taking a huge chunk out of that deficit that we have. And this bill is almost half of what we're trying to accomplish. So I would ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Ms. Evans moves the call. Members move to file item 10, AB number 3, on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 3 with amendments by Assemblymember Evans.
Ms. Evans on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendments, these amendments address the public safety portion of the budget. The amendments make technical and statutory changes that would increase the penalty assessment on different fines and forfeitures imposed on criminal offenses. This would support the operations of the Department of Justice's forensic laboratories and results in a savings of $45 million. It would transfer $497,000 from a federal fund account at the State Controller's Office to the Alcohol Beverage Control Fund in order to save these funds from reverting back to the federal government. The amendments establish that in implementing the 2009 Budget Act, they would include funding reductions to inmate and parolee rehabilitation programs, and when the CDCR makes those changes, that it would consider prioritizing the establishment of credentialed teacher and vocational instructor positions, and consider placing some inmates in half-day instead of full-day programs to achieve further savings. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Mr. Hackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We do oppose these amendments and respectfully ask for a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Hackman is requiring a roll call vote on the, requesting a roll call vote on the amendments. Mrs. Evans is asking for an aye. Mr. Hackman is asking for no. Clerk, and requires the majority of those present and voting. Clerk will open the roll. Ms. Evans is asking for an aye. Mr. Hackman is asking for no. Clerk, majority of those present voting. Clerk, close the roll. Ayes 43, noes 25. Amendments are adopted. And now we'll take up the bill. There is no objection without reference to file. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 3 by the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to fines and forfeitures.
Ms. Evans.
Having summarized the amendments in my opening statement, members, I would simply ask for your aye vote on the bill in chief.
Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, this is a sorry way to run a representative government, or if you want to call it a democracy. It's a sorry way. This is government by fiat. We just have adopted some amendments. Now, maybe the issues have been discussed, but does anybody really know? Have they been able to digest them thoroughly? Have games been played with the verbiage as it happens around here all the time? Have there been any subcommittee hearings of the budget on any of this? No. Maybe some subject matter or our usual now informational hearings, but these are not hearings. If you don't take votes, that's not a hearing. Subcommittees around here historically took votes, offered then those votes to the full budget committee, which took a vote and had an open hearing and had people come and talk. We now run a legislature on an informational hearing basis to the degree that we have any hearings. It's been no more than that. The budget process starts with the submission of the budget by the governor. Then it starts with the subcommittees, a long and very deliberative process where members are empowered. And the point I'm making in my debate, you members are giving up your power to a system of fiat, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. You don't have any constructive input in that budget if a budget subcommittee is no more than an informational hearing. Likewise in the full budget committee or a conference committee. We had a lovely conference committee last year. Took no votes. Had a lot of talking. Very rhetorical, wonderful exercise. At least the public got to come and wave at us. Some 600 a day for about 10 days. But there was no substantive negotiations, discussions, debate nor did it happen on the floor. It all happened in the Big Five and then comes to the floor. Now, I do appreciate the Speaker Perez desiring to do something a little different around here. I commend him for that, and I will work with him for that. But that is not a good process. That is no way to work. And it is no way to offer the people of the state of California a ruse that these bills we're voting on here today solve our budget problem or even a step towards that end. It'd be a Pyrrhic one at best, more or less a fiasco in many respects, creating false expectations that we're really buckling down. And oh, we wait till the very last day. How marvelous. Where have we been? Could we not have been deliberating and working a little sooner on this with more dispatch if the budget's the biggest issue? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, these bills are not cooked. These bills will burn the people we represent.
Thank you. Mr. Calderon.
Right. I only want to disassociate myself from those comments suggesting that I don't know what I'm voting on. I know exactly what I'm voting on, and I know exactly what the deadline is for us to get something done. And it always amazes me, in all the years I've been up here, how there's always so many members that say, well, geez, I just saw the bills now, or they were only out 2 days ago, or I only saw it yesterday. Well, to them, I just offer this. We're in the big leagues. Get it done, do your work, and you won't have to be surprised, because there's a lot of members on this floor that are voting that know exactly what they're voting for.
Thank you. Mr. Nilo.
Get it done indeed. What has the leadership of this House been doing with regard to our budget problem since the inception of this special session?
With reference to the bill, sir.
Yes.
Thank
with
you.
reference to this bill.
Yes.
And with reference to this, the entire package of bills. But I have to make the observation that the leadership of this chamber since the inception of the special session has done nothing with regard to the fundamental budget challenge that we have before us. Now, I will give credit to the Senate for at least discussing it and passing a few measures, which is what we're acting on now, not things that have been generated by this House, by the other House. This House has had no substantive discussions about the budget deficit this year. Now, with regard to process, Madam Chair of the Budget Committee basically agreed with Mr. DeVore when she said the bills have been in print since Friday. I think that's kind of the point. But that's not really my point. We have done nothing. We are now acting on some measures that have been passed here from the Senate. And if I could modestly suggest, this whole package of bills, and this is on this bill, but it's on the others, are non-substantive. This does not address the budget problem. Let us sit down, leadership of our side of the aisle and your side of the aisle, the budget subcommittees, and discuss the things that we need to do, the bills we need to pass now in order to cover the deficit that we have for this year and begin working on the budget deficit for the next year. I humbly suggest that this entire package of bills does nothing with regard to that, and I will just be laying off because I don't want to give the message that I'm obstructing things. I'm just laying off, hoping that we can talk substantively about substantive problems to the very severe budget challenge that we have.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's just review a little bit about what we have done in terms of process. And we can go back to November of 2008 when we started this process, just working on the deficit that we faced back then in November of 2008. And then we went through several hearings and budget amendments to the budget bill back in February of 2009. And then we had weeks and weeks and weeks, literally weeks, of public hearing in conference committee and debate. And contrary to what the vice chair of the budget committee says, we had days and days of votes in conference committee on very specific issues, issue after issue after issue, literally days of votes. We took them on the record, and if you want to look, I've got the DVDs in my office if you'd like to go back and refresh your memory about what we actually debated and what we did. This particular bill, as is many of these bills that we're talking about, amends the actions that we took last summer. And we've been working nonstop on this budget since November of 2008, on this budget and on the previous year's budget, and we'll continue doing it when we go back into conference committee this year. Now, if you choose not to participate or if you choose not to observe what's happening, that's very, very unfortunate. But it doesn't change the fact that we have been doing virtually nothing but debating this budget going back to November 2008. Back on this bill, it takes a huge chunk out of the current deficit. And it does that. This particular bill deals with the corrections and the public safety part of the budget bill, and we are currently amending that. And this whole package of bills that we're considering here today takes about $5 billion out of a $20 billion deficit, a deficit which hopefully will continue to go down as our state revenues go up. So I would respectfully ask for your aye vote on this and the other bills that we will be discussing in a moment.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 14. Measure is adopted. We'll move to file item 11, AB number 4. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 4 with amendments by Assemblymember Evans.
Ms. Evans on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are amendments to the Human Services Trailer Bill. The amendments would extend the current Department of Developmental Services 3% reduction that we did last year. It would extend the sunset deadline by 1 year. It would also reduce regional center purchases of service payments and operations, and it is estimated to save the state general fund, let's be real clear, savings, $60.9 million in 2010-2011, and it does this by reducing certain payment for services and suspending certain mandates, including average caseload ratios, salary schedules, and expenditure reports. And then finally, the bill recognizes expanded eligibility for federal financial participation in foster care costs. And this is estimated to save the state general fund $69.5 million in 2010-11. And this change, or this proposal, is part of the administration's larger proposal for additional federal funds, and it is conditioned on changes in federal law. And I would ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. On the amendments, my apologies. We'll have a voice vote on the amendments. Strike the roll. We'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor of the amendments signify by the normal sound of aye. Any opposed? Amendments are adopted. Without objection, we'll take this bill up without reference to file. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 4 by the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to social services.
Ms. Evans.
Having summarized the amendments, members, in my opening statement, I would respectfully ask for an aye vote on the amended bill.
Mr. Garrick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the author.
Without objection.
Thank you. Could you tell me when the hearings were held in our House as it relates to the first bill, the second bill, third bill, and particularly this fourth bill that you're speaking to right now? What date and time and what room those were held in?
Well, it would be a challenge to have to tell you off the top of my head what date and times they were, but we have had conference committee hearings, as I said, in the summertime on the current fiscal year's budget, which this amends, and we have done several subcommittee hearings on the amendments in these bills.
On my own time?
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you. These are the bills that were just put into print on Friday, and yet we can't remember when the hearings were held. There's something terribly wrong here, and I urge a no vote.
Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I have a real concern on a whole series of bills that we're taking this afternoon. You know, a colleague of ours just recently said that we are in the big leagues right now. Yes, we are, and we should behave like big leaguers, and that is abide by the rules and the laws. You can't expect your colleagues to vote on something at the last minute. You throw it on the table and say, these are the amendments, these are the bills, this is how we're going to drive this train for the state of California. It perpetuates, once again, that this state is dysfunctional. And my concern here, as well as many of the colleagues that sit in this chamber, this distinguished chamber, is that if we can't even follow the simple process of the simple courtesy of giving colleagues the opportunity to look at the bills and the amendments on many of these issues that we're going to be voting on, which are relatively, compared to what we're going to have to be dealing with towards the summer with the budget deficit that we're going to have, then we're in big trouble. So I can't vote on this bill, and I urge a no vote.
Thank you. All debate having ceased. Ms. Evans, you may close.
Again, we have had hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing. And if you choose not to attend the hearings or watch the hearings or listen to the hearings, that's one thing. But it does not change the fact that we have had the hearings. We have had lots of debate, lots of discussion about all of the changes we are discussing here today. Now, I respect people laying off the bills or voting your conscience, but please, we have had lots and lots of process, lots and lots of public input, and lots of debate. There has to be a time for a vote. Today is the time. Today is the last day of the special session. Today is the time that we must vote, and I'm asking for your aye vote.
Thank you. Clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Ms. Evans moves the call. Members, we'll go back to motions and resolutions. If you can focus your attention to Ms. Connie Conway. Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, very much. Members, if I might have your attention just for a moment. I'm very happy and proud to introduce a Chamber of Commerce leadership group. I think some of you in this room have either participated in them or started them. I was worried that by coming to Sacramento they would miss their daily soap operas, but I think we are providing them a modicum of entertainment this afternoon, and with all due apologies, I'm not meaning to offend anyone, but I do want to introduce a group from Tulare, where I live, Leadership Tulare, up here in the balcony. If you'd stand up, members, so we can welcome you. Someday one of them may be on this floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
You're so welcome. Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to bring something to the attention of the members. Mistakenly, we've posted and voted on the wrong set of bills. So we are going to go through a couple of procedural motions. First, we're going to lift the calls on SB 2 and 4. As soon as we finish lifting the calls on those, whether they pass or fail, there'll be a motion to expunge and rescind the record on all SBs up to now, and we will start over on the ABs on concurrence. I hope that that's clear. We'll lift the call first on SBs 2 and 4. When the vote is complete, I will make a motion to rescind and expunge, and we'll start over again with concurrence bills on AB on the budget.
Okay, we'll lift the call on SB 2. Clerk will post. Clerk will close the roll. 35 ayes, 15 noes. Measure fails. Clerk will post on SB 4. Open the roll. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 24, noes 20. Measure fails. Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby request unanimous consent to rescind and expunge the votes on SB 1, SB 2, SB 3, and SB 4. The motion is only to rescind and expunge the votes on each of those bills.
Without objection. Clerk will read on file item 8, AB1. Clerk will read. File item 1, AB number 1. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to support of state government, making appropriation therefore.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize to everybody for the confusion. These are the same bills, members, the same amendments. It's just that the Senate passed out the ABs and brought them to our floor, and we need to pass them out as ABs, Assembly bills, not Senate bills. This is the same set of amendments that we voted on before. This is the one that makes the adjustment to the 2009-10 budget that shifts federal funding for AIDS prevention programs to local agencies. And I would respectfully ask for an aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 5. Measure is adopted. And Senate amendments are concurred in. Clerk will read file item 2, AB 2. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to the Budget Act of 2010.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you again, members. This is the same as we voted on in the SB form. It is just simply ABs, and I would ask for your aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing no debate, Mr. Jeffries.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. I'm just curious now that the colleague is back on the floor if redoing all the bills and eliminating the score and everything is actually part of the big league rules. Is that what big leaguers do? Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Ms. Evans moves the call. We'll file item 3, AB 3. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 3 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to fines and forfeitures.
Ms. Evans. Ms. Evans.
Again, members, these are the same amendments as we just discussed, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 15. Measures adopted. Senate amendments are concurred in. Move to file. File item 4, AB 4. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 4 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to Social Services.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, members, these are the same amendments that we discussed before. This is the Health and Human Services trailer bill. I would respectfully ask for your aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing here no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Ms. Evans moves the call. Members will move to file item 5, AB 7. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 7 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to Environment, making an appropriation therefore, and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, again, this is concurrence in Senate amendments, and the amendments deal with the resources trailer bill, specifically with the bottle bill recycling program and with the state's clean water revolving fund. The state's bottle bill program is currently insolvent as a result of loans made from that fund to the general fund, as well as conversion of reduced container sales and spiking recycling rates. And as a result, the grants to local conservation corps and other recycling expenditures have been completely frozen. This bill will unfreeze it and bring solvency to the state's bottle bill recycling program by accelerating a single $100 million payment into the fund and freezing various expenditures. Let's see, with respect to the state clean water revolving fund, the amendments make changes to the fund necessary to qualify for federal funding. In order to provide immediate relief, the bill itself will require a 2/3 vote. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on the amendments in concurrence with the Senate amendments.
Members, this is very similar to a bill that that this House voted for last session. The difference in this bill is that the bill we passed last session included some expansion of deposit amounts on more containers. This bill does not have that expansion, so it doesn't include juice containers and other containers that were in our original bill, but it does contain the acceleration of the payments so that we can once again make the fund whole and deal with the job loss that occurred because of this fund's drop in revenues. We have lost now about 500 jobs in the recycling and the industry that handles these materials for recycling, and we cannot afford to lose any more jobs in this industry, so I encourage and urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, this is another example of a proposal that's half-baked. This states an intent to never borrow again, but intent language is not binding in any way. In no way does it address the current debt, the borrowing, and just says we intend not to ever do it again. That means absolutely nothing.
Ms. Evans, you may close.
Members, I respectfully ask for an aye vote on the amendments.
Clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes. All those vote who desire to vote. Members, this requires a 54. Mr. Tirico moves the call. All right, we'll lift a call. File item 5. Clerk will post. All those voters are to vote. All those voters are to vote. Ms. Evans, clerk will close the roll. Ms. Evans, measure fails. Ayes 42, noes 2. Ms. Evans.
Move for reconsideration.
Without objection. Clerk will note. Move to file item 6, AB 8. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 8 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to taxation.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate amendments do several things related to various tax enforcement provisions. First, it reduces the tax gap by creating the financial institution record match system, which is similar to the system that we currently have for collection of child support payments, if you're familiar with that system. It would require financial institutions to support franchise tax board efforts to identify delinquent taxpayers. Second, it requires out-of-state sellers such as Amazon that meet specific requirements to collect sales and use tax. These taxes are already required by law to be paid by the individuals who make the purchases, but compliance with state law is very low. This provision applies only to entities that sell over $10,000 of merchandise to California residents each year, and basically levels the playing field for brick and mortar businesses that are located in the state of California. The amendments also strengthen tax laws related to abusive tax shelters, permits the state to suspend state occupational and professional licenses for individuals who have unpaid income tax liabilities after all due process has been exhausted. And these provisions are intended to increase compliance with existing taxes, thereby reducing our tax or revenue gap. Collectively, these provisions raise revenues of approximately $160 million. That's $160 million in additional revenues next year. I respectfully ask for your aye vote in concurrence with the Senate amendments.
Mr. Calderon, for what purpose?
Return to motions and resolutions.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, members, I'd like to move this file item to Rules Committee.
Can you be clear as to which bill you're referencing, sir? File item 6.
The measure that was just up. Fuck me.
You're the one that said it.
I know. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I expected my team to perform.
This is flip away.
Mr. Calderon. There's a motion to re-refer file item 6 AB8 to Rules Committee. It takes a second by Ms. Ma. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Without objection, the bill is re-referred to Rules Committee.
Go to motions.
We'll return to motions and resolutions. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd like to greet and announce some constituents that are here today, parents, teachers, and students in the gallery from the Corona Norco Unified School District. Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome. We'll now move to file item 7, AB 10. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 10 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to tribal gaming.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a general government bill. It makes technical and statutory changes. It's here on concurrence. It would extend general fund payments from tribal gaming compacts. Currently, state statute directs a portion of the securitized compact asset revenue streams to repayment of traffic congestion relief fund loans. For 2008-09 and 2009-10, these payments were directed to the general fund for approximately $100 million every year. This bill extends the general fund payment to 2010-11. After that date, the funds would again be available for the Traffic Congestion Relief Fund loan repayment. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 10. Measures adopted. Senate amendments are concurred in. Move to AB 10, file item 7. Pardon me, SB 6, file item 13. On the amendments, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 6 with amendments by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review.
Ms. Evans.
Speaker, members, these amendments relate to the transportation bill. This package has multiple components that fully fund our transit system, would create a robust funding stream for transit, and achieve a total general fund savings of $1.2 billion in the budget year. To keep funding for streets and roads whole and to create $600 million in general fund savings, this bill eliminates the sales tax on gasoline and replaces it with an ongoing excise tax increase on gasoline. Next, in the current year, this bill appropriates $400 million for transit operators to immediately mitigate current service cuts and job losses. Beginning in 2011 and 12, the bill then creates an ongoing $350 million funding source for transit, fully funds intercity rail by increasing the diesel sales tax and decreasing the diesel excise tax. After that, this bill saves $650 million general fund in the current budget year by delaying the new credit sharing tax benefit and a partial delay in the net operating loss tax benefit for 1 year. Beginning in 2011 and 12, these delays in the tax breaks will be replaced by increases in the gas excise tax, providing increased out-year funding for transportation. Lastly, the bill gives metropolitan planning agencies authority to levy fees on gasoline if approved by a majority vote of the people to support local transit and other non-vehicular transportation. Members, this bill is a major step forward in our challenge to close the state's deficit and to continue to provide funding for transit. It's one of the few bright spots that I think we're able to achieve in an otherwise dismal economic picture. And with some creativity, we've been able to present a plan that makes over $1 billion in our deficit while holding transportation, transit, and education funding harmless and reducing the price of gasoline at the pump by 5 cents in the budget year. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We do oppose this amendments and ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Hagman, it takes 3 members to demand a roll call.
3 members for roll call.
Mr. Hagman, Dr. Emerson, and Mr. Garrick. Very well. Takes the majority of those voting. Clerk will open the roll. Ms. Evans is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman is asking for a no vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 37, noes 21. Amendments are adopted. Ms. Evans, clerk will read on the bill.
Senate Bill 6 by the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to transportation finance and making an appropriation therefore.
Ms. Evans.
Members, I just summarized the amendments to the bill for you, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote on the amended bill.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 All those voters desire to vote. All those voters are 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 to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Ms. Evans moves the call. We'll move to AB 11 on concurrence. Without reference to file. Is there any objection to taking this measure up without reference to file? Seeing none. Okay, we're prepared to take up AB 11 without reference to file. Without objection, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 11 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to Transportation.
Ms. Evans.
Members, AB 11 is a simple bill. The bill would allow the California Transportation Commission to grant repayment assurances to local agencies that wish to front local funds for bond projects that are frozen as a result of the cash crisis. It's, as I said, simple. It simply requires a majority vote, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Hackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's just a clarification for the Republican caucus. These are the same bills as the SB bills. There'll be SB 11, the same what we spoke in the caucus, SB 12, and possibly SB 5. It's just they got passed by the Senate and got over here, so we're bringing these up on the wharf.
Mr. Solario.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a good bill that allows local agencies to jumpstart shovel-ready transportation projects. I know in my own county, this would create about 6,000 jobs. So we need to get our economy going again. This is going to help advance projects with local dollars that will later be reimbursed by the state, largely projects that were previously approved through Proposition 116. I ask for your aye vote to support the bill.
Ms. Evans, you may close.
Yes, members, I should have mentioned this bill and the next bill that we will take up are primarily jobs bills. This bill does allow local agencies to jumpstart stopped bond projects. So it's a good good bill in terms of jobs. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate, further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 43, no 0. Measure is adopted. Senate amendments are concurred in. Move to AB 12 without reference to file. Without objection, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 12 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to maritime security and making an appropriation therefore.
Ms. Evans.
This bill allows $100 million of Proposition 1B bond funding to be used for port security over the next 2 years. These funds are the unencumbered balance of funds that were already set aside for this purpose. It does two things. It improves our security in our ports, and it creates jobs. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. We're going to lift a call on file item 2, AB2. Clerk will post. All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 6. Senate amendments are concurred in. 16 Senate amendments are concurred in. We're going to lift a call on SB 6. Clerk will post. All those vote desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 24. Senate amendments are concurred in. Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The PERS Committee to meet immediately in the Rules Committee room. PERS Committee to meet immediately in the Rules Committee room.
Without objection, the measure will be re-referred to committee. SB 29. Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I hereby request unanimous consent to refer SB 29 to the Committee of Public Employees, Retirement and Social Security and the Committee on Appropriations.
We did that through the chair, sir. Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appropriations Committee to meet immediately in Rules Committee room. Appropriations Committee to meet immediately in the Rules Committee room.
Members, we'll have a Democratic caucus. Democratic caucus. Members, we are reconvening to take up additional measures. We're prepared to lift a call on file item 4, AB4. Clerk will post. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 25, noes 23. Measure fails. Mr. Tirico.
Consideration, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection. Clerk will note. Thank you. Members, Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, if we could take up SBX 85, please. For purpose of amendments. File item number 12. Senate Bill 5 in the 8th extraordinary session.
Yes. File item 12, SB 5. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 5 with amendment. It's by Assemblymember Evans.
Mr. Tirico.
Mr. Speaker, the amendments are at the desk by Assemblymember Evans in the Budget Committee to provide both current year and 2010-2011 fiscal year budget solutions to ensure that the state has sufficient cash on hand to be able to make required payments. Republicans were seeking a roll call vote on this matter.
Roll call vote. Mr. Tirico is asking for an aye. Mr. Hackman, are you asking for an aye as well?
No, we're asking for a no, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Hackman then is asking for a no. Clerk will open the roll. These are on amendments, members. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 21. Amendments are adopted. Mr. Tirico.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby request unanimous consent to substitute substitute the roll for the matter just taken up, SB 5, for file items 14 through 20, which are SB 7, 8, 10, 11, and 13, for purpose of amendments on all of those bills.
Without objection, the request is granted. Those bills are amended. Mr. Tirico.
One final motion, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to re-refer SB 32 to the Committee on Revenue and Taxation and the Committee on Appropriations.
Without objection, the request is granted. We have a committee report on SB 29 without objection. The committee report will be placed at the desk and deemed adopted, and the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 29.
All right, members, there is no other business before the House. Mr. Tirico moves. Mr. Garrick seconds that the House stands adjourned until tomorrow, Tuesday the 23rd, 3:30, for the State of the Judiciary address. Without objection, we'll do a second reading.
Assembly concur in Resolution 117 with amendments.
All bills are deemed read and amendments adopted. Come on up.
You bet. Change my vote.
Not too much. Warren pushed the wrong button for me, so.
Oh.
Not too many changes today.
Emerson, file item 3, AB3, no to not.